In this video, I'll be grading every NFL team's offseason, and we're going to start in the AFC East with my personal favorite team, the Buffalo Bills. I promise this will be unbiased. So they lost Renzo Alexander, Shaq Lawson, Frank Gore, and Jordan Phillips most notably. They traded away their first-round pick for Josh Norman, which is the true number one receiver that they needed. They added Josh Norman, Mario Addison, A.J. Klein, all to an already stacked defense. They picked up A.J. Epinesa in the second round. I think that was a steal. Zach Moss out of Utah to come play as a 1-2 punch with Devin Singletary, Gabe Davis, and Jake Fromm out of Georgia to come in as a backup to play behind Josh Allen. They added proven depth in the secondary with Josh Norman. They have a sick 1-2 punch at running back that's going to be lethal. Much needed additions to the pass rush with Addison and Epinesa. Their weapons for Josh Allen are now abundant, so I'm giving this team an offseason grade of a B+. New England Patriots, everyone knows that they lost Tom Brady. They also lost Kyle Van Noy, Danny Shelton, Jamie Collins, Landon Roberts. I didn't include Gronk on that because he didn't play for them last year. They lost all that talent while really not adding much talent. They got Adrian Phillips. Through the draft, they traded down a lot. They got Kyle Duggar at safety. So this team has no proven franchise quarterback with minimal weapons. They lost major pieces in free agency, and they had a minimal return for Gronk. I'm giving this team an offseason grade of a D. The Dolphins, on the other hand, didn't lose too much in free agency. They added Kyle Van Noy, Shaq Lawson, Byron Jones, Ted Karras, Emmanuel Ogbah, Jordan Howard, Landon Roberts. This team did good in free agency. In the draft, they got Tua, and I don't know about Tua. I think he's too injury prone for me, especially when you can't see him with your own doctors. In free agency, the Dolphins didn't really lose many players, and they picked up an abundance of them, including Byron Jones and Shaq Lawson, who I believe they overpaid. They drafted Tua, their franchise guy, but he's injury prone and has no one to throw to, and they still have the third most cap space. I'm giving them a B+. The Jets lost Robbie Anderson, Brandon Shell, Tom Compton, Darrell Roberts, Maurice Kennedy. They picked up George Fant. So they picked up a bunch of offensive linemen, upgraded their offensive line, and they drafted Mekhi Becton, Denzel Mims. I think that this turns out to be a decent draft class for the Jets. Becton is probably an underrated tackle here. So they added better protection and weapons for Sam Darnold, improved their secondary with Pierre Desir. I'm giving them an offseason grade of a C+. I think they did a lot of good things here, but not as good as other teams. Bengals lost Tyler Eifert, Andrew Billings, Nick Vigil. They picked up Billings' replacement and a big run stopper with DJ Reader, Trey Waynes at cornerback, Von Bell, Mackenzie Alexander. This is a very improved secondary here. Through the draft, they picked up Joe Burrow and T. Higgins. So they got Joe Burrow, a weapon to throw to in the second round, and Joe Burrow first overall, of course. They lost minimal talent in free agency, but are still 24th in remaining cap space. They really improved on defense and drafted Joe Burrow and T. Higgins, who's going to learn and grow together. They're going to learn from Andy Dalton and A.J. Green, who've been doing it together a while. Offseason grade of B. The Ravens didn't really lose too much in free agency, but they picked up Calais Campbell, Michael Brockers, Derek Wolfe, Jake Ryan. Those are 4 solid additions to that defense. They added Patrick Queen out of LSU at linebacker and J.K. Dobbins, who's running back out of Ohio State. These are 2 really solid picks. I thought both of them were going to go earlier in the draft. I think the Ravens got steals. They bolstered an already impressive defense through free agency and the draft. The backfield with Dobbins, Ingram, and Jackson is a nightmare to match up with on defense. The Ravens didn't really make many moves, but the ones they did, they have an impact. They maintained their team chemistry. I'm giving them an A. Steelers lost Javon Hargrave and B.J. Finney along with Tyler Matakovich, most notably. They picked up Eric Ebron, big tight end. Derek Watt and Steven Wisniewski, the guard. They drafted Chase Claypool out of Notre Dame at wide receiver. That could be a really good pick to go along with Juju Smith-Schuster. So they had no first-round pick as a result of the trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick this season. Got a big, reliable tight end for Big Ben. They didn't get better or worse, and they don't have a reliable backup for Big Ben, who's shown he's injury-prone lately. So C- for this team. The Browns lost Joe Schobert, Christian Kirksey, and Demarius Randall. So they picked up Adrian Claiborne, Andrew Billings, Carl Joseph. Austin Hooper is a big addition. Jack Conklin as well. Huge addition for this team. In the draft, they got Jedrick Willis, who I think is the best offensive tackle, and Grant Delpit, who I believe is the best safety, both in this draft. Those picks were steals. They have a big hole at linebacker with the losses of Schobert and Kirksey. They have much better protection for Mayfield with the best blocking tight end in the game. So I'm giving them an offseason grade of a B+. Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs lost a lot. They lost Fuller, Emmanuel Ogbah, Steven Wisniewski, Reggie Ragland, LaShawn McCoy, Darren Lee, Spencer Ware, Terrell Suggs. These are all big losses. They picked up Mike Remmers to better protect Mahomes, and Ricky Seals-Jones at tight end as another weapon. In the draft, they got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back out of LSU. Big, elusive back. He's going to come in, do some good things for this offense. Their secondary took a big blow with losses of Fuller and Claiborne. They really had no money to work with. They drafted another weapon, so considering that, I'm going to give them a C. Chargers lost longtime quarterback Philip Rivers. They traded away Russell Okung. Lost Thomas Davis, Antonio Gates, Derek Watt. They picked up guard Trey Turner from Carolina, Nick Vigil at linebacker, Chris Harris at corner. That defensive secondary is going to be lethal. They picked up Justin Herbert and Kenneth Murray in the draft, so they got their franchise quarterback and a linebacker to come in and take Thomas Davis' spot. So that secondary is lethal. They replaced Philip Rivers. They got younger and improved offensive line. I'm giving them an offseason grade of an A-. I really like this offseason for the Chargers. Good luck if you're an offense playing them. Denver Broncos, they went and they lost Derek Wolfe, Chris Harris, Adam Gostis, Connor McGovern, Brandon Allen, Joe Flacco, Devontae Booker, Ronald Leary. But they added Melvin Gordon at running back, Graham Glasgow, Nick Vannett, A.J. Boye, and Jeff Driscoll at quarterback. In the draft, they got Jerry Jeudy and K.J. Hamler. Their first two picks were receivers, so they put Drew Lock in a position to succeed with all these new weapons around him. They franchise tagged safety Justin Simmons, which they really needed to do. And I'm unsure if Drew Lock's the answer at QB, so offseason grade B+. Now, Las Vegas Raiders lost Carl Joseph, Dwayne Harris, Eric Tomlinson. They picked up Carl Nassib, Corey Littleton, Marcus Mariota, Nick O'Leary, Jason Witten, Nick Kwiatkowski, Nelson Aguilar. In the draft, they got Henry Ruggs and Damon Arnett. Ruggs, I think, the best receiver in this draft. So they got the number one receiver in the draft and their number one guy, their number one target. They might have reached with the Arnett pick. They improved on both sides of the football. I'm giving them offseason grade C+. The Jags lost quarterback Nick Foles, Jake Ryan, Nick O'Leary, Seth DeVolve, Marquise Lee, Calais Campbell. Picked up in free agency Joe Schobert, Rodney Gunter, Tyler Eifert, who's injury-prone tight end, but he's very talented when he's healthy, and Al Woods. In the draft, they got C.J. Henderson, Clavon Chaisson, Laviska Shenault. I really like the Chaisson pick. I think he's a really good edge rusher. So they lost team leaders with Campbell and Foles. Putting faith in Gardner Minshew is questionable. 12 picks in the draft, and they're clearly in rebuild mode. Offseason grade C. The Texans, they lost DeAndre Hopkins. I'll never understand that. Barkevius Mingo, Carlos Hyde, Lamar Miller, and DJ Reader. So some big losses. They picked up David Johnson, Brandon Cooks, Randall Cobb, Timmy Jernigan, Jalen Watkins. I mean, I don't know. In the draft, they only had 5 picks. Ross Blacklock was their first pick, defensive tackle out of TSU. They had minimal return for Hopkins, and they took a really bad contract in return. No true number 1 receiver now. They only had 5 picks, and they failed to improve on a solid foundation. Offseason grade D. The Titans lost Jack Conklin. They also lost Marcus Mariota, Logan Ryan, and in free agency they picked up Vic Beasley, Reggie Gilbert, Jack Crawford. In the draft, they got Isaiah Wilson to replace Jack Conklin at offensive tackle. Christian Fulton fell to them in the second round, the cornerback out of LSU. So the franchise tagged Derrick Henry. They overpaid historically streaky quarterback in Ryan Tannehill. I don't know how that's going to work out. No major improvements on their team. Solid draft. Offseason grade of C+. The Colts lost Devin Funchess, Pierre Desir, Eric Ebron. They picked up Phillip Rivers, Xavier Rhodes, DeForest Buckner in a trade with San Francisco 49ers. Trey Burton at tight end to replace Ebron. They drafted Michael Pittman Jr., the wide receiver out of Southern Cal, and Jonathan Taylor out of Wisconsin. I really like the Jonathan Taylor pick. He's a really good running back out of Wisconsin. So they lost quantity and gained a lot of quality in free agency. They have a mentor and student at QB with Phil Rivers and Jacob Eason, and they got better on defense. Offseason grade B+. We're going to start off in the NFC with the conference champion 49ers. So they lost DeForest Buckner, Joe Staley retired, Sheldon Day, Jordan Matthews, Matt Breida. They picked up Trent Williams, that's a big addition, offensive tackle, Travis Benjamin, Tom Compton. They drafted Javon Kinlaw and Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk, he's been compared to Megatron, and Kinlaw is going to save cap space, and they remain stout on D-line after losing Buckner. They replaced retired Joe Staley with Trent Williams. Stole Brandon Ayuk in the draft. Offseason grade A+. Amazing. So the Seahawks lost Jadeveon Clowney, Marshawn Lynch, Josh Gordon, DJ Fluker, Michael Kendricks, Robert Turbin, George Fant. So they lost a lot. They picked up BJ Finney, Greg Olson, Chance Warmack, Philip Dorsett. In the draft, they got Jordan Brooks out of Texas Tech and Darrell Taylor, the edge rusher from Tennessee. So their offensive line was downgraded. They lost Jadeveon Clowney, which is huge. They have more weapons for Wilson, but less protection for him, so he's going to be scrambling a lot. I'm going to give the Seahawks a grade of a C. The Rams lost Brandon Cooks, Todd Gurley, Clay Matthews, Dante Fowler, Eric Weddle. In free agency, they added a Sean Robinson, Leonard Floyd. They drafted Cam Akers, a running back from Florida State, and Van Jefferson, wide receiver out of Florida, to give Jared Goff some new weapons. They started a rebuild and retool, but they lost $20.15 million in dead cap from Todd Gurley alone. So that's a big burden. I'm giving them an off-season grade of a D+. Tough offseason for the Rams. The Cardinals lost David Johnson. They're very happy about that. Pharoh Cooper, Cassius Marsh, Jordan Mills, AJ Shipley. They added DeAndre Hopkins, Jordan Phillips, Devin Kennard, Devondre Campbell, and Trayvon Coley. I mean, they could not be happier about this free agency. DeAndre Hopkins was an absolute steal. They drafted Isaiah Simmons, too. I mean, he fell to them, and I couldn't believe that. That's also a steal. I really love this offseason. They stole DeAndre Hopkins, offloaded Johnson's huge contract. Isaiah Simmons fell to them in draft, and they franchise tagged Chandler Jones. Insane linebacking core, A+ for them. Packers lost Blake Martinez, Brian Bulaga, Jimmy Graham, Devon House, Kyler Fackrell, Jared Feldheer. I mean, they lost a lot. They gained Christian Kirksey, who I believe they overpaid. Devin Funchess at receiver, he's okay, but he's not what Aaron Rodgers needs. And he also doesn't need Jordan Love or A.J. Dillon, considering he has Aaron Jones at running back. I don't know what this team's doing. A lot of people are questioning them, including me. They've failed Aaron Rodgers personally, and they failed the Green Bay fan base, which is an awesome fan base. They overpaid Christian Kirksey, a liability in coverage, and they failed to improve. I'm giving them an offseason grade of an F. They absolutely failed this offseason. You got to build for right now when you have Aaron Rodgers. So the Bears lost Clinton Dix, Nick Kwiatkowski, Leonard Floyd, Nick Williams, Kyle Long. They added Nick Foles, Robert Quinn, Jimmy Graham, Demetrius Harris, Barkevius Mingo, Artie Burns, Jermaine Ifedi. In the draft, they drafted another tight end, Cole Kmet, which I don't know about that pick, but he could be an impact player. They just have a lot of tight ends on their roster. So Foles, Trubisky, quarterback competition is positive. Maybe Foles being here will light a fire under Trubisky, but I don't think so. They have so many tight ends, and they need receivers. I'm giving the Bears an offseason grade C-. Now on to the Lions, who lost Darius Slay, Devin Kenner, Deshaun Robinson. Not too much talent they lost. They picked up the guard out of Philly. They picked up Jamie Collins, Desmond Trufant, Danny Shelton, Geronimo Allison, Reggie Ragland. I really like their free agency. It's a lot of under-the-radar picks. Jeff Okudah, DeAndre Swift, and Julian Okwara. 3 big improvements. They improved their defense all around with Collins, Trufant, and Ragland. Great under-the-radar draft. So I'm giving them an offseason grade of a B. The Lions did well. Now, the Minnesota Vikings lost Stephon Diggs to Buffalo in a trade. They also lost Everson Griffin, Linval Joseph, Trey Waynes, Xavier Rhodes. A lot of major pieces to that team that have been there for a long time. They picked up Michael Pierce, Tajay Sharp, Anthony Zettel in free agency. So, we'll see how that works out for them. In the draft, they got, I think, the steal of the draft with Justin Jefferson. I think he's a very talented, underrated receiver. They've got all these guys, Jeff Gladney at cornerback to replace Xavier Rhodes, James Lynch, defensive tackle. They had 15 draft picks and lost a lot of talent in free agency, but they still have a deadly receiving corps with Thielen, Sharp, and Jefferson. It's just different weapons for Kirk Cousins. Offseason grade of a C+. On to Tampa Bay, who lost Jameis Winston. Big loss. He had 30 interceptions and 30 touchdowns last year. Rashad Perriman, Sam Darnold. So they lost a lot of nobodies. They gained Tom Brady, Gronk, Joe Hag, DeAndre Hall. This really makes their competition window 2 years at max, though, because of Tom Brady's age and Gronk's injury history. They added protection for Tristan Wirfs and Anton Winfield Jr., the safety out of Minnesota. I really like that pick for them. So they brought in a lot of talent and lost little. This offense could be unstoppable the next 2 years. Offseason grade A-. Now, New Orleans Saints lost Teddy Bridgewater, Von Bell, A.J. Klein, Eli Apple, Manti Te'o. Some decent losses, but they picked up Jameis Winston, interestingly enough, Emmanuel Sanders, and Malcolm Jenkins. Those are 3 pretty big pickups, including fullback Michael Burton, to maybe do some blocking. Who knows, maybe I'll get a run or 2 in there. Cesar Ruiz, center guard out of Michigan. I love that pick. They drafted more protection for Drew Brees. That trio at quarterback's going to be interesting. They do some weird stuff there. Another elite receiver with Emmanuel Sanders. Offseason grade is a B. So the Falcons lost Austin Hooper, Desmond Trufant, Wes Schweitzer, Vic Beasley, Devontae Freeman, J.J. Wilcox, Jonathan Cyprien, Jamar Taylor. They lost a lot. They picked up running back Todd Gurley, Leroy Reynolds, Hayden Hurst in a trade with the Baltimore Ravens. So they had some decent pickups as well. They picked up A.J. Terrell, the cornerback out of Clemson, Marion Davidson, D lineman out of Auburn. They lost a lot of talent, including the best blocking tight end in football, and Gurley is a low risk, high reward, C-. Panthers lost a lot, including Cam Newton, Luke Kuechly, James Bradbury, Mario Addison, Vernon Butler, Greg Olsen, Darrell McCoy. Basically anyone you knew from the roster last year is gone, except for Christian McCaffrey, obviously. They picked up Teddy Bridgewater, Robbie Anderson. Some decent pickups, but it's a new era here. It's going to be a long rebuild, I believe. They drafted Derek Brown, the defensive lineman out of Auburn. I thought they should have taken Isaiah Simmons, who ultimately fell to Arizona. So they only have one defensive starter returning from last season. That's tough. And the Luke Kuechly loss is devastating. It's a new era here. C- in Carolina. They didn't do too much, and I didn't like the way they handled Cam Newton. The Philadelphia Eagles lost Malcolm Jenkins, Jordan Howard, Tim Jernigan, Ronald Darby, Jason Peters, Nelson Aguilar, Nigel Bradham, Vinnie Curry, and they picked up Darius Slade, Javon Hargrave, Nickel Roby-Coleman, Marquise Goodwin. They improved that secondary, which they really needed to do. They picked up Jalen Reagor, speedy wide receiver out of TCU, Jalen Hurts, quarterback out of Oklahoma. That's questionable. They improved that secondary in a speedy receiving core, and they added depth behind Wentz with an injury history. Offseason grade, B-. Darius Slay really makes a difference here, and as well as Marquise Goodwin, former Olympic track star. The Cowboys lost Travis Frederick to retirement, Jason Witten, Byron Jones, Randall Cobb, Robert Quinn, Malik Collins, Jeff Heath. They added Gerald McCoy, Dontari Poe, Alton Smith, which is a low risk, high reward. He's had legal troubles, but best of luck to him. Clinton Dix. That's a really good pickup as well. They drafted CeeDee Lamb, which I don't like that pick for them. They had other needs, but I don't think Lamb's going to turn out to be the receiver people say he is. Trevon Diggs, that on the other hand, is a very good pickup. They had big additions at the defensive tackle position with McCoy, Poe, and Gallimore. That receiving core looks pretty good. Franchise tag Dak Prescott, which they definitely shouldn't have done. He deserves better than that. You got to show him some respect. B+ offseason for the Cowboys. The New York Giants lost Mike Remmers, Cody Latimer, Eli Manning, Michael Thomas, Alec Ogletree, Antoine Bethea, and Dion Buchanan. They've been trying to offload Eli Manning's contract for a while, so that worked out. They added James Bradbury, underrated corner, Blake Martinez, Kyler Fackrell, Dion Lewis at running back behind Saquon, Nate Ebner, safety from New England. They drafted Andrew Thomas when I thought they were going to take Jedrick Willis with their 4th overall pick. Xavier McKinney, the safety, fell to them in the 2nd round. So Manning's retirement saved a lot of cap space. They drafted offensive line at pick number 4 to make holes for Barkley and protect Jones. They improved the defense with Martinez, Bradbury, and McKinney. Offseason grade of a B. The Redskins lost Trent Williams, Eric Flowers, Josh Norman, never really worked out there, Case Keenum, Colt McCoy, Breon Borders, Vernon Davis, Jordan Reed. And on the other hand, they picked up Kyle Allen, Kendall Fuller, Ronald Darby, Logan Thomas, Wes Schweitzer, Cornelius Lucas, Thomas Davis. So this is part of the rebuild and retool. They got to offload a lot of contracts and gain some new ones. They picked up Chase Young, edge out of Ohio State, Antonio Gibson. You know Chase Young's going to come in and he's going to be a disruptor on that defense. But the weapons surrounding Dwayne Haskins are still minimal. They lost Paul Richardson as well. They improved that secondary a lot with additions of Ronald Darby and Kendall Fuller. They're 2 good pickups. Offseason grade C+. Let me know what you'd change in the comments below and any other ideas you have for football-related videos. Thanks for watching.